How did I end up in New York? Well, so I went to. So I'll start with like, how did I become interested in art? Because it's kind of relevant, I suppose, right? So I was always interested in art because when I was like 3 or 4, I had an older sister. She's like 10 years older than me, and she took a drawing class in middle school, and I was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Drawing." I was like, "That looks cool. I want to draw too." And so I would draw next to her, and she kind of was the person that got it started. And then when I was in the 6th grade, my oldest sister was in college, and she had taken an art history course. It was like Jansen's Art Through the Ages or Gardner's or whatever it is, right? So it was like either the first or second edition. And she couldn't sell her book back because they were updating to a new edition. So she's like, "Hey, you like art? Here you go." I'm in the 6th grade. She gives me a college level art history book. And this thing was amazing. Like, like opened up this whole world that I didn't even know it existed. And since I was a kid, and you know how kids are, they focus all their attention on whatever they're obsessed with. When I was 15, so I first started painting when I was 15, totally on my own. Well, it was a couple of years after getting the art history book. And I was really motivated and really drawn by like how the Impressionists saw things. I started doing landscape. So I started doing landscape painting on my own. And then my first year of college, I continued to do landscape painting once I took my first oil painting class. A lot of the instructors were coming out of like the beatnik way of instruction, which was basically no instruction. Just you come in, you sort of talk about what you're going to be doing for the first 20 minutes, and then they were gone. And you might see them in the last 10 minutes when you're cleaning up to make sure that. And so for a 17-year-old to however old I was when I finished, I was really frustrating. Later, I would appreciate it because I realized what it didn't do for my technical skill. It did a lot for trying to foster creativity. So now, as a person who's 36, I would say that for me, it's more important to have your creativity ahead of your technical ability. Because if your technical ability is like neck and neck, or if your technical ability is beyond your creativity, you're gonna get bored and, I don't know, you're gonna do like really redundant stuff or something. So I just feel like you might not take a lot of risks. Not having everything figured out technically also can help you, keep searching, keep painting, keep wanting to have your craft just nip at the heels of your creative ability. So that was good, but at the time, after I graduated, I took a year off to work to save money, but also to try and figure out what do I want to do. And what I came to the decision of was that I wanted to go to a school that would be able to fill in the gaps, these education gaps, that I didn't receive. So I really didn't know how to draw. I didn't know how to paint like the way I wanted. And what I was really interested in were 3 basic things. So the things that I was interested in were the human figure, landscape, and still life. Eventually I would just lose interest in still life altogether. So I applied for a bunch of schools, and I think I got accepted to 4. Each application was $100. Yeah, to go to art school. So I wanted to go to an art school that was also a graduate school. So I got accepted to the New York Academy of Art, which was both. There's no way I would have been able to afford it if I had not gotten the scholarship. So I decided to go, and that's how I ended up in New York. So between, I think it it was 2007 to 2009, to me, this was one of the best schools in terms of training, right? Like, it didn't do a whole lot in terms of questioning things. Like, there was a lot of, I'll put it this way, there was a bunch of students that were from all over the world who could draw and paint better than any teacher that I had ever had in undergrad. But their knowledge of art history was so lacking. A lot of these people had never even heard of an eighth of the people that I'd been studying since college. So, since I was in 6th grade, actually, yeah. So, but they didn't know anything about modernism. They didn't know what the difference between Art Deco and Art Nouveau. They didn't know. They could just draw circles around people, you know, and they were from everywhere, and it sort of felt a little bit out of place. But seeing how they were my peers, and you know, when you're in your 20s, it doesn't take a whole lot to be able to relate to somebody else who's the same age, you know, regardless of what, you know, where you are in terms of art history knowledge. So between my peers and the faculty, I would say after the first year, I really saw a huge, significant jump in my technical abilities. So I was pretty happy about that. And they also provided a lot of information and knowledge regarding historical approaches to art. So I took a class of history of materials and techniques. So you learned how pigment was ground. You learn the names of different pigments, where they came from. This is why this has this name, et cetera, et cetera. You know, so I was really exposed to a lot, lots of really good teachers, and plus it was in New York. So, you know, they had museums. You can go in and see a lot of these paintings that I'd only seen in magazines and books. So, but yeah, sort of in a nutshell, that's kind of how I went from growing up in the farm town. It's a total fluke, you know. If you think about it, like, it doesn't really make any sense. I should have been more interested in cows, or grown up being a rancher or something like that.